Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristen.
This is So I'm Watching This Show. All right. When we started this show, we started out as a podcast only. And we have about probably like 300 and some.
We have almost 400 episodes.
Yeah. We have like 300 episodes that are audio only.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And we started doing a video about midway through our fourth year. Third year. And basically, some of those episodes that are audio only, I think are particularly good or interesting or funny or whatever. And so I was going to see if I could convert them to the YouTube by adding some pictures and video clips and trailers and stuff like that, or trailer footage. Yeah. So, yeah, if you clicked on this, you know what it is that you're about to listen to us talk about and maybe enjoy watching some visual aids.
Pictures.
So, yeah.
Right. Bye.
See ya. Because first we're going to talk about the 1999 NBC miniseries, The Magical Legend of the Leprechauns.
Yeah, which has several actors with many accolades amongst them.
I mean, and Roger Daltrey, so...
There's an EGOT in this cast. It's insane.
Once upon a time,
the real advantage of being invisible.
in a land where dreams come true, a forbidden love burned brightly
Come away with me. Where's my daughter?
and sparked an epic battle. This November, the world will see and believe the legend of the Leprechauns. NBC Sunday in 3 weeks.
So this is a movie. It is seared in my mind. I couldn't believe how much of it I still remembered. Because if you had asked me beforehand, I would tell you that I watched it like maybe 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And then while we were watching, especially that first hour, I think I think a lot of young people, it's like they have a tendency to tune out of things even when it's something they like.
Yeah.
So it's like that first hour I've seen a lot, but I have such visceral memories of this thing that is not a thing. Like, people don't know what it is.
It's not like Merlin. Like, Merlin feels a lot more universal to, like, our age group. But this one is decidedely not. In fact, the only memory I have of it was that one St. Patrick's Day, like 6 years ago, where we put it on randomly and Jill was there.
And it was on Sci-Fi.
Yeah.
And it was well into the movie. So we were clashing between the human storyline and the fantasy storyline. And I think it was when Whoopi Goldberg showed up as the Grand Banshee. And Jill was like, what the crap are we watching? Like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
So I guess in the 80s and 90s, miniseries were like a thing for television. It was like 2 or 3 times a year, there would be like, usually each network had a thing. So there'd be like an event. And they did Merlin, which was Merlin is kind of what's risen to the top. It's kind of the creme de la creme. And we covered it back in June for Midsummer last year, if you want to hear that. But there was a lot. There was like an Alice in Wonderland miniseries. There was Gulliver's Travels.
I remember Gulliver's Travels. It was Ted Danson, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah, I think it was Ted Danson.
And they did The Odyssey, which is another one that I've threatened on this podcast because it's Isabella Rossellini and Vanessa Williams and Bernadette Peters.
Yeah, I don't remember who's Odysseus.
Armand Assante.
Right. We do this every time we talk about it. I forget every time. And then you tell me and I'm like, that's right. It is him.
So around pretty much after Merlin, things had peaked and there was nowhere to go but down. So around like the 99, 2000, 2001, they were still making them, but it was like it turned into, I think at this point, Hallmark became involved. And they just got stupid.
Well, they also got way too into the, like, digital effects. Like, the Magical Legend of the Leprechaun looks bad. Like, most of the time. It looks bad unless Randy Quaid is on screen, but then you're still stuck looking at Randy Quaid. So it's like, who's the real loser?
You were really baffled by romantic lead Randy Quaid.
Yeah.
6'5"
Who amongst us would not
Randy
be?
Quaid.
It was weird.
We were in a very just because you can doesn't mean you should place with technology.
Yes.
Because when we talked about Merlin, there's a handful of things that are janky in Merlin, But what's more impressive is how good so much of it looks.
Agreed.
You know, it's
and it does have that consistency where this Magical Legends of the Leprechaun is wildly inconsistent from shot to shot.
So I was 14 when this came out, and I've talked about this point in my life a little bit on the podcast, but I was very confused. I've said several times, like in some way I was more mature than my peers, and in other ways I was very much not. And I wasn't handling the transition from like youth into adulthood very well. And so in particular, my 9th grade year in high school is very painful, like remembering it and stuff. And because I evened out, but I just remember being 14 and clinging to this because it was one of the few things that was giving me like
something.
Yeah, like and it's really juvenile. Watching it, I was like, this is really juvenile until the handful of times it's not.
Yeah, it got really dark a couple of times.
And I remember I had a friend Tara, and she loved this movie. So we watched it a bunch, like after school, that like year. But the other thing I remember about it is it was like a dismal failure. It flopped so hard because I remember Jay Leno used to give away DVD copies of it as prizes. And he would always be like the lowest rated NBC miniseries of all time.
That's hilarious. That's like, that might be the funniest thing Jay Leno's ever done.
And then something trumped it. So he was like, I have to like up my game. Have to
do something else, yeah.
But yeah, so it's basically Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
It's leprechauns, and well, it's 2 stories. There's a human story and a fantasy story. And the human story is Randy Quaid is in Ireland for some like nefarious capitalist thing. Do they ever really say, is it a golf course or?
So basically he works for this company that sends him there to see if they can like buy up all the land and houses and essentially put like a resort, like a golf resort there. Okay. Like as if Ireland doesn't already have enough golf courses.
Like Ireland's some untapped resource.
Yeah,
like.
No one lives there. Like everybody's gonna be so crazy about the Ireland golfing, and it's like, bitch, we been knew about the Ireland golfing.
And so he has a meet cute with Kathleen. That I know, that I remember.
Yeah. Her name is Orla Brady.
Yeah, where he finds her bathing in the river and spies on her, and it's like this big plot point until it's not.
It really is. It's like, it's for like the first episode and a half, she's calling him a peeping Tom. And it's like, what?
And she has these 4 brothers, one of whom is Peter Serafinowicz.
Which was hilarious, but also so weird.
And they're present through the whole thing in a weird way.
They really are. It's
one of the things that annoys me so much about these miniseries is it's like they have nothing but time, and yet somehow I feel like even less gets accomplished. It's like we have like 3 hours should be so much time to efficiently tell this sweeping dual romance.
Yeah, especially because whenever you see Romeo and Juliet, it's like a tight 90 minutes. It's like, it doesn't need to be 3 hours long.
It just does feel like it accomplishes so little. And one thing I will go ahead and say is I think this is actually probably fine for kids if they have any tolerance for like the old special effects.
Yeah, but do you not worry that a child would get bored watching this?
Probably, actually.
Okay. Because I would worry that a child would get bored. And specifically during the Randy Quaid parts.
Human
because
stuff, and there's too much
that is
of it.
like not interesting or like new or fresh or special in any way. It's just weirdly Randy Quaid talking down to this woman and getting a priest to tell her that he didn't assault her. And it's just like so weird.
She catches him spying on her. Granted, his foot was caught. But
yeah, he was trying to leave.
Yeah.
As soon as he realized she was like nude, he was like, "Oh, I need to leave." And then his foot got caught in a branch, and he fell and startled her.
Well, and then a second time he sneaks up on her, this time with a camera, and so it's like he's taking pictures of her,
Right?
And so they chase him into a church, and he befriends, because I mean you can always trust an Irish Catholic priest to do the right thing. And so she accuses him in front of the priest of being a peeping Tom, and the priest was like, "Those are some hefty allegations, young lady.
Those are serious accusations. He seems like a nice young man." And I just was like,
Father, this man here is the one I've been talking about.
And you're making a serious accusation against him. Are you a peeping Tom, as she says? No. Fair enough. There you are, Kathleen. You've got the wrong map.
You had
awful.
You had a crisis like 30 or 40 minutes into the first episode.
I mean, in total fairness, this was 21 years ago, but still.
Well, do you want Harvey Weinstein? Because that's how you get Harvey
Weinstein.
Yeah, and so basically he asks Randy Quaid, "Are you a peeping Tom?" And he was like, "No." And he goes, "See, it's all ironed out." And she was kind of like, "I guess." And so then they fall into this like sweeping romance, one for the ages. And it like...
That's no Kermit and Miss Piggy, I'll tell you that right now.
All of this is juxtaposed with a war between the leprechauns and the Troopin' Fairies.
They don't stop calling them that.
You were like, "What is a trooping fairy?" And I just looked at you and I said, "I don't know." And they do not stop saying it.
They really don't. And it was at no point explained. Like, are trooping fairies a different kind of fairy? Are they the only fairies that go down to the earth? Because, like, none of the royal fairies go down to the earth except for Princess Jessica.
I was waiting for you to have a bigger problem with that yesterday, and you were saving it for the podcast.
Well, I said it out loud. Her name is Jessica.
The Irish fairy princess's name, was like Karen, Sandy, not like...
Her parents' names are Boric and Morag, and her name is Jessica? You're kidding me.
We can't even get a Siobhan or something?
No, Siobhan, Nev, Maeve, anything. Jessica and Mickey?
Mickey's fine. Mickey's Muldoon.
Fine. Mickey Muldoon, whatever. Princess Jessica of the Fairies? Absolutely not. I refuse.
Halt the projector. So it's a completely mixed bag from here on out, because there's actually stuff that I kind of want to praise. Like, I think some of the design, like, they went all out with the fairies. Like,
they certainly, I will say, they really committed to their aesthetics in a way that is, I think, admirable, because
there was nothing half-assed about it.
No, there was nothing half-assed, and I didn't, like, wall-to-wall hate it, like, so that I wanted to, like, you know, get drunk or something, but there were points that some of the fairy stuff was like, why did you choose that as your fairy stuff? Because their whole palace looks like the Gaudi Cathedral in Barcelona, and I was like, why, though? Like, what a weird thing.
I thought the design of the fairy palace was so interesting in a way that I was like, I kept wanting more of that from the movie, and we don't really get it. Because there's even like an underwater fairy palace, and you were like, oh, is there going to be mermaids? And I was like, nope. Like,
no, yeah, it's weird.
Elements of the underwater palace are interesting, but it's mostly just like coral with bubbles. And I kind of was like, it's so close to being cool, but something is just not. I don't know. They're all white and blonde with insane blue eyes, so it's like a little bit kind of like, oh.
Well, it's like insane blue eyes, but it's like the blue eyes from the Dune miniseries. And it's like, so all basically for like the first 90 minutes of this thing, I was like, I want to watch Dune. Can we watch Dune instead?
And all the Gaussian blur filters.
Oh my God. At one point I was like, how are they even, the lighting must have been so bright in this scene. How are they even seeing anything? How do they know they're walking the right direction?
And I did always appreciate the aesthetic of the fair, like their clothes and stuff. Yeah. But I even with appreciating it, I remember being a little annoyed that there was like not much variety. Like it's like, this is a fairy male uniform and this is a fairy female uniform.
Yeah.
And Like the king and queen don't have a lot of costume changes, which again, the fairy king is Roger Daltrey of The Who. So there are things worth seeing in this movie.
There are definitely things worth experiencing.
Also, I think a lot of the leprechaun stuff worked, or at least there was a charm to it. I kind of did like how scoundrelly they were.
Sure.
And the lead guy, Mickey, I remember saying...
His name's Daniel Betts.
Daniel Betts. I remember being like, oh, he's cuter than I remember.
Yeah.
And I was like, in a way that I feel like I would have clocked that at 14, but...
So, like, I guess my biggest issue is... And I assume that this was at the beginning of several of these people's careers. Like, I know it was the beginning of Kieran Culkin's career. So I can't find fault in that. He was still a child. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, was this at the beginning of Kevin McKidd and Tony Curran's careers? Because they are bad in this.
I mean,
like,
I think there's only so much they were getting direction-wise.
That's probably true, too. I just was like, man, I really like both of you, and this is, like, not great. And then them wigs, their stupid orange wigs. But, like, only half of them had wigs, because Kieran Culkin's hair was real and Tony Curran's hair was real. But Daniel Betts and Kevin McKidd, who has curly red hair naturally, were wearing these horrible, like, straw straight red wigs. It was very weird.
They were very committed to the aesthetics and being able to tell what was what at a glance. So I think they were like, why Kieran's hair was like dyed hair was good enough and the rest of them needed Party City wigs. I don't know. But
yeah, super weird.
For better and worse, because some of it does not work. But I did like all of the fantasy critters that are kind of scattered throughout.
Yeah, all of the like Irish
folklore. Yeah,
mythology kind of stuff was cool. Like, I mean, leaving aside the fact that it's Whoopi Goldberg, there's a banshee and there's they have pukas at one point, and
there's little green like
it was like
bog
that
monsters and a headless horseman
cool.
type thing, and it just like all of that. I that's the kind of stuff I want from these things, and they do give it to us, like I said, for better and worse, because there does come a point where it like what are the Oakshees? It was like the tree fairies was, or they're not fair. They're like
tree spirits. They're sort of like dryads, except they weren't.
Yeah. Oh, right, because that was the scene where they suddenly had like guns.
Yeah.
And you were like,
yeah, they were just like flying so that the Mickey, right, was flying through the air, like trying to escape the fairies, and they had these like fucking bazooka guns, and they just like
they later explained away as being like spider webs, but
yeah, but they like blew up a rock with it. And I was like, oh my god.
The first time the fairies showed up, you were like beside yourself, because it was basically like 4 twinks just like flew in.
Yeah, just like 4 blonde twinks. Like it looked like the start of a gay porn. It, like a Rumble porn or something.
Well, and both the fairies and the leprechauns have these like knobs.
Dildos?
Yeah.
Like person-sized dildos?
Out, you like shrieked. And
well,
they like
first because they just pull out these like small the parts that look the most like dildos. They pull them out of who knows where, and then they like and they turn long into like staffs. But they're just still all knobby. With like
ribbed,
with like dick tops. It was so bizarre. You can't tell me it's not bizarre.
I mean, watching it with adult eyes, I was kind of like, oh my.
Yeah, that's aggressive.
So it's a very silly plot. They're at war because they're at war, and
it makes just as much sense as Romeo and Juliet. Like, why did the Montagues and the Capulets hate each other? Because they always have.
And the Grand Banshee keeps telling them to stop, and they don't listen.
Or they'll pay the ultimate price. And no one seems to know what that means.
Because
I just was like, you're gonna be dead, bro.
They are shocked and betrayed when they do die.
Yeah.
And then they go to war, and then Jessica and Mickey, because they take 2 potions. Why do they take the first potion?
Okay, the first potion is the poison that makes it look like they're dead.
No, I mean at the tree. They take a potion at the tree.
They didn't take a potion at the tree. They just lay down at the tree, and it went all lightning-y, and then they woke up at the tree.
Oh, okay.
There was nothing. There was no rhyme or reason.
This is a weird episode.
I think it's a really good episode.
They take a poison. If their families won't stop fighting, then they're going to kill themselves.
Well, they want it to... It's very different from Romeo and Juliet because Romeo and Juliet both understand what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to, the quote-unquote priest, the uncle that likes butter in the swamp, which opens a whole host of questions that are never answered.
This is the Leprechauns, not Romeo and Juliet.
Yes. So they go out... Well, he's like the priest, though, from Romeo and Juliet. That's his character equivalent. So they go out to him and he's like, you take this poison, it'll look like you're dead, but you have to take the antidote within 10 minutes or else you'll be for real dead. And they're like, got it.
Or else you'll pay the ultimate price.
Or else you'll pay the ultimate price. And they're like, we got it. Cool. And so they decide that they are going to basically drink this poison in the middle of a battlefield, call their parents over somehow to watch them be dead. And then Kathleen will administer the antidote. And then Kathleen really bones it pretty hard.
We did this wrong. I should have made you just explain it back to me.
Oh, man.
And again, considering that we had 3 hours to tell this story, there's no sense of, stakes. There's no sense of time, how long any of this has taken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's... So when Kathleen bones it, she drops the antidote on the only rock in that field.
Well, she does more than drop the rock. She's trying to drive the fucking buggy, because the buggy race and the having the buggy with the horse whose name is Firefly, we know that much. That's a huge plot point in this movie is this fucking buggy and how she's... Because at the buggy race, she's not allowed to drive it for some reason. So it's almost implying that she can't drive it. And then she proves that she can't drive the buggy when she drives it into the field. And I was like, she's just going to run over them, isn't she? And she doesn't, but she does hit a ditch or something. And she flies out of the buggy across and over in front of the horse. And then the antidote flies out of her hand, and you're right, smashes on the only rock in the field. And she's just like, oh. And that's it. It's so stupid.
I was cooking by this point, so I had kind of checked out a little bit, and I was like, we've got enough to talk about.
Yeah, we're fine. It's fine.
Oh my God. So
then Randy Quaid, he decides to come and help her. And that goes about as well as you think it would, because he trips on the other rock and literally flies forward into the horse's bucking foot. So the horse literally kicks him straight in the foot, and then he falls down an even deeper ditch. And the fairies have to all lift him out with their and it only takes 6 fairies to lift 6'5" Randy Quaid out of this ditch.
He seems like he'd be dense.
He does seem like he'd be dense. So anyway, then the Grand Banshee shows up and they're like, well, we dropped the antidote, blah, blah, blah. Can't you save them? And it's like, only if everybody wants peace in their hearts. And the warlord guy is like, I'm out of a job. And it's just very silly. Very silly.
So she waited for every single fairy and leprechaun to want peace in their hearts.
Which is a risky game, because there's got to be people that live in that fairy castle who couldn't give 2 shits if Princess Jessica died. You know what I mean?
You did forget when they go to visit the Grand Banshee and she lives in this awesome hotel.
It is just a hotel. So Whoopi Goldberg was like, I'm not going to Ireland. You're going to film my scenes in this hotel.
And I forgot at the end, because they come back, because everybody comes back, because nothing matters. There's no stakes.
Yeah.
And there's a wedding, which was actually kind of sweet. I remember liking because Kathleen's wearing that beautiful white dress, and it's the shot of like her and Randy Quaid are watching the fairy wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that song that plays like 5 times during the movie.
It really does.
It's like that season of Once Upon a Time when they were in Camelot, and Henry, the only song he had was Only You.
Oh, God.
Do you remember he just kept playing it?
Yeah.
Because Jen was like, what is this? I was like, it's a song from the 80s. It's a pop song. But by that point, we've fallen in love with our captors. So it's like nice. And the Whoopi Goldberg is in like a silver dress because all up until this point, she's got like crazy black and purple witch hair. And
like feathers and stuff. Yeah.
But in the end, she's like in silver with like no hair and just like 2 giant wings on her head.
Yeah.
It's magnificent. Like, oh man. So yeah, I had pulled up, I meant to say this in the beginning, I had pulled up a chunk of the Variety review by Stephen Oxman.
Okay.
And he was mentioning the Gulliver's Travels and Alice in Wonderland and all that. And he said, so instead of finding full-fledged stories to tell, they've now conjured 4 hours from little more than the idea of a mythical character that is best known to Americans as a serial pitchman. Screenwriter Peter Barnes laboriously pieces together a narrative borrowing obviously and heavily from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet to give the magical legend of the leprechauns a necessary but deeply jarring push. Perhaps next time we'll be treated to a King Lear with live action Smurfs or something.
Hey, I would probably watch that, And
we did gloss over the single most baffling thing about this entire enterprise is that it debuted on November 7th.
Yeah, what the fuck? That is so bananas to me, because you were like, I remember watching this in November, and I was like, how on earth did they not release this on St. Patrick's Day?
In March?
Yeah, and you were like, I don't know, but they didn't, and I looked it up, and November 9th. Fucking so weird. I don't get it.
So, it's available to watch for free on Amazon Prime. You can also find, like, it pirated on, like, YouTube and Dailymotion and all that.
Yeah.
It's not good, but it's worth seeing. Like, I wish I was better at film editing because I just edit down like a 5-minute best of reel.
Yeah,
because you don't need the human stuff.
I agree. I think it's worth experiencing, but now that I've done so, I don't want to do it again. I'm good now.
It's just so silly and such a time capsule to a very specific point in time.
Yeah, like, I would definitely love for any of our listeners, are you familiar with this? Like, did you remember this? I want to hear from you. For sure.
Does anybody know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm so curious if there are people who are nostalgic about this.
About the magical legend of the leprechauns?
Yeah, I'm very curious and interested.
Such a hefty, like...
Yeah.
Because it's also happening in modern day.
Yeah, like it's like in 1999 is when it's happening.
So it's not like an ancient tale that's like unfolding or like it's it doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's bizarre.
So, okay. Well, on that note,
as always, you can follow us on Twitter @SoI'mWatching, Instagram @SoI'mWatchingThisShow. You can also follow along with all the episodes and everything else that links out from our website, soimwatching.com. And other than that, you can rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you listen. And that's it for us. Bye.